Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. It is Eric Arnold here in the Politics Barn, Wednesday night, the 20th of July. And we haven't made videos in a few weeks. The phone is basically dead. I have bought a camera. It's on order. It should be here Friday. So I do anticipate resuming shooting videos for my 7 loyal viewers out there. I know General Pete C is going, yeah, all right. So, yep, I will be back in a more regular schedule of shooting videos. But I wanted to throw one out here with the borrowed phone from my wife, just to let you know I'm still alive. I have a good episode here, I think. We're going to talk Civil War. Civil War, Russia-Ukrainian War, and then Civil United States War. I've had this vague feeling now for a long time that this country is heading down the path towards Civil War. But I can never quite enunciate or see clearly how that's going to happen. Right? I mean, we all know that if there is a civil war, it's not going to look like 1861 where we got big armies slamming into each other and it's a geographic half the north versus the south. We know it's not going to look like that. But what's it going to look like? How's it going to get going? What's the impetus? I can't quite see it. Until very recently, I kind of had a epiphany, if you will. Where I saw a scenario that I thought was very, very plausible. And it could happen soon, soon being within the next 12 months. So I thought I'd tell you all a horror story, a horror bedtime story, and see what you think of it. See if you guys believe this could happen, or if this is all nonsense, this is all ridiculous, or this could actually happen. So let me start my story by talking about Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson, he is a Canadian psychologist, I guess, who now has taken that background and has more or less become an influencer, I guess, if you will. Perhaps along the lines of a Joe Rogan. In other words, Peterson talks. Millions of people listen to this guy. People want to hear what this guy has to say. He's very intelligent, well-read. He's not like Joe Rogan. In other words, Peterson's a serious guy, a serious academic, speaks in academic terms, unlike Joe Rogan, who's a comedian and uses the F word. So, but both are similar yet different. Peterson wrote a piece for the Daily Wire on July 10th. That is Ben Shapiro's website. And then he also transcribed his own article into a YouTube video where he just basically sat there and read his own article. And I didn't even know it. I mean, that's how well he reads his article. It's like, oh, you weren't even speaking off the cuff. This was like you talking off a teleprompter. But at any rate, the gist of the article is the Ukraine-Russia war, how he sees that as a civil war in that we are the Ukraine. In other words, the West is the Ukraine. It's a proxy fight. Everybody knows that. NATO and the United States are pushing the Ukraine. So it's the United States basically versus Russia. And he sees that in itself as a civil war. Now he and I are pretty much, and I'm going to, there's a link in the comments or the, whatever you call it, the intro to my video. So you can click on that and you can hear what Peterson said for yourself. It's about an hour. Very interesting. Peterson and I are on the same page when it comes to the Ukraine-Russia war. We both think it's stupid. We think it's ridiculous. We think it is very dangerous, has a good chance of getting out of control, and we think it ought to be shut down yesterday. So there's that. Now, his points that he makes about the Russia war, let me briefly give you a synopsis of that, and then I'm going to lead into how his thinking has led me to see how the United States Civil War could get going, and the impetus will be the Russia-Ukraine war. Peterson basically is putting forth the position that Russia wants that buffer space, and they're willing to do whatever they have to do to get that buffer space, the buffer space being the Ukraine. And they don't want a Western power sitting on their border, within half a day's drive of Moscow, being able to hit Moscow with not even long-range weapons, medium-range weapons from the Ukraine. If you think that Putin has no right to think that way and he's a thug and, he has no reason to fear the West, it's an argument. I would argue that's 100% not the way Vladimir Putin thinks, but he may not be justified in thinking that way. Peterson goes on and gives some examples as to why Russia views the West as something that he just is not willing to put up with right on his doorstep. And he gives the example of the what is a woman argument, in that we had a United States Supreme Court justice go through the confirmation process and could not or would not define what a woman is. And Peterson's saying, look, if you can't do that, there's no reasoning with you. You have lost all logic. When you're just simply saying A is not A is B, well, then you can make up any kind of reasoning in your twisted world. And I liked his word, you're deranged. He said, you're deranged. There's no reasoning with this person. So Putin, according to Peterson, sees the West as just completely decadent, completely not somebody that he wants next door to him. And he more or less along the lines of the complete woke, leftist, Marxist ideology that right now runs this country for the most part. Has control of the executive branch, it has control of the media, has control of the Congress. The only thing it doesn't control is the Supreme Court, apparently, but it controls most of the major institutions in this country, academia, I already mentioned the media. Hell, a lot of the United States corporations are now woke. So, Putin, I think, has correctly identified that the West is trending towards Marxism. And the Russians are saying, look, been there, done that, we don't want any part of that, and you guys just stay away. So Peterson's guess, if you will, is that Putin is willing to burn the Ukraine to the ground rather than have a Western allied power on its doorstep. So, and I'd say at the moment, Peterson's viewpoint is seemingly correct in that the Russians are seemingly hell-bent on prosecuting this war, and they don't seem to be ready to stop anytime soon. So that's where we're at now. Now, Peterson goes further and says, look, there's no way to beat these guys. They're not going to stop. There's no reason for them to stop. He thinks Putin's popular. Now, I don't know what his rationale for that is. Popular within his own country. Obviously, he's not popular here, but within his own country, that Putin's popular. I don't know what his evidence for that is. He might be right, he might be wrong. I mean, I know that the war hawks in this country are putting it to us that, look, support for this is going to collapse over there. And they're just going to hang this guy by his boot heels, just like they did Mussolini, and it'll be over. The Russian people will rise up and go, what the hell are we doing fighting this war? And it'll be over. Peterson says that's probably not going to happen. I tend to agree. that, I think, patriotism is just as high for their country as it is over here for our country. So the idea that the Russian people are going to rise up and toss Putin from the balcony of the Kremlin, no, I think that's unlikely. So Peterson and I are on the same page there. Where it got kind of interesting to me was Peterson said, look, I think we've already gotten to the point where this is getting out of control, and he sees 4 consequences of this war continuing, and he calls it inevitable. That was the word he used, that this is inevitable. So here, let me give you his 4 inevitable consequences of this Russia-USA war, this NATO-USA war. $300 a barrel oil. He thinks that eventually oil is going to go to $300 a barrel. He says that within the next 1 to 2 years. The Russians control a lot of oil, and at the moment it's kind of spotty where it's going. The Western Europeans are still getting some, but not all of it. And then eventually, Peterson argues, I think probably correctly, that as this war gets worse and worse, the Russians are just going to shut it off altogether. Why would they continue to help their enemies when they can inflict more pain? They probably will do so. Where he came up with 300, no idea. But what does that equate to? 10, 12, $15 a gallon gasoline? That's what that equates to us. You go fill up your car, you're talking, instead of $50, you're talking $125 to fill up your car. You're talking double your heating costs in the wintertime, double your electric bill, to run your air conditioner that we're all running right now. So that would be catastrophic to the Western economies, including the United States. Food shortages, Apparently Russia and the Ukraine both export a good amount of food, grain, what have you, and this war is putting an end to that. That's knocking that into a cocked hat. So he believes that will, of course, hurt the poorest countries, the ones that can't grow their own food. He believes Africa, that perhaps he came up with a number, 150 million. 150 million, that is roughly, I did the number and now I'm running it in my head and it seems wrong, but it's about 1.5% of the world population. I guess that's not a huge number unless you're one of the 1.5% that's starving. So that will happen. And then those people that are starving, mass migration. Those people in North Africa, the Middle East, the people that are hungry, well, they'll pack up and move where the food is, just like the old Sam Kinison joke. Go where the food is. Well, that's what they'll do. And they'll most likely head to Europe, so you'll have that happen again, which always causes sociological dislocation and upset and chaos when tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people that aren't from there suddenly move in, don't speak the language, don't know the culture norms and what have you, nowhere to put them, and that's a big mess. So that he's looking forward to. He thinks that's definitely going to happen, as basically linked to number 2. And then this last one, here's the kicker. And he uses the word inevitable, which this is his theory. think I spelled that all correctly, tactical nuclear warheads that the Russians, at some point, will begin using tactical nuclear warheads. Well, now, through the whole video, Peterson does not make a prognostication about whether the West, the NATO, will officially at some point join in with the Ukraine and the proxy part of this war will end, and it's simply going to be Russians slamming up against the United States. Russian rockets hitting USA targets, rockets hitting Russian targets, USA jets dueling it out with Russian jets. He doesn't make that opinion. He doesn't have to. If the Russians, at some point, open up with tactical nuclear warheads, that's it. We're in it. We're absolutely in it at that point. Judging by the people who are in charge in this country, oh my goodness, yes. We're absolutely going to be in that war. So that is where he sees this going. Now let me throw another something to you here outside of Peterson's opinion. This was an interview given by Serbian President Alexander Vučić, V-U-C-I-C, Vučić. He's, I guess, the current Serbian president. Serbia, where's Serbia? Serbia is a country about what? 3 countries to the west of the Ukraine, Russia. I think Moldova's in there somewhere, but Serbia is even further to the west of that. But at any rate, it's not that far from where we're talking here. And I think this is a guy that probably knows the area pretty well, probably knows the Russians pretty well. He's not NATO. Serbia is not part of NATO, I'm pretty sure of that. So, this guy might fall a little bit on the Russian side of the equation. But this is what he said in an interview. He's being interviewed and he's, quote, "I know what awaits us. As soon as Vladimir Putin has done his work in Seversk, Bakhmut, and Soledar," I don't know where that is, but it's somewhere in the theater of the front lines right now. Seversk, Bakhmut, and Soledar. After reaching the second line, Slavinsk, Kramatorsk, Akaveda. I'm sure I butchered the hell out of those words there, but as soon as he reaches that second line there, Slavinsk, etc., he will come up with a proposal, and they will reject it. Well, let me get it right. And if they don't accept it, they being the West, and they won't, that's what he said, all hell will break loose. Let me give you that again. I know what awaits us. As soon as Vladimir Putin has done his work in Seversk, Balok, and Soledar, after reaching the second line, Slavinsk, etc., he'll come up with a proposal, and if the West don't accept it, and they won't, all hell will break loose. Period. End of quote. Now, he doesn't say what all hell breaking loose means. I would think that some tactical nuclear warheads could be what that means. In other words, Putin's got what he wants. He's achieved his initial goal, and he wants to end this, but he can't end this because the Ukraine and the West won't end it. They won't say, okay, we give up. Let's just call it a day, and you give us some concessions, and we'll just say it's good. Let's say it's good. But we're not ready to do that, at least from what I've heard. What does Putin do? He's got to try to win this war somehow. He's got to. He can't lose it. He can't go back to his own people and say, yeah, I tried, but it just cost too much and too many people got killed. We don't have any more generals. Hell, I got privates now acting as generals. We just got to give up. He's not going to do that. He's not going to do that. So what's left? Well, try to make it hurt even more. Try to force the Americans to come to the bargaining table. This is what Peterson thinks. Do I think this? I don't know. I guess I, maybe haven't thought about it as much as Peterson has. But, I'm hoping that's not going to happen. I'm hoping that's not going to happen. But here you got two guys following this probably closer than I am, and they think it is going to happen. Serbian president, Jordan Peterson. Peterson and I, like I said, we're on the exact same page as far as this war goes. Like Peterson said, and the bottom line is, nobody gives a damn about the Ukraine, and they never have. And then he points out, of course, is it the Holodomor? Holodomor? Is that what it was called? When Stalin starved the Ukrainian people in the 30s, he did this for a couple reasons. To teach the Ukrainian people a lesson that this is how it rolls in the Soviet Union right now. Communism, that's all we're down with. Do what you're told or we'll kill you. So he was teaching them a lesson, and he was also implementing his version of communism, i.e., all for one and one for all. So the Ukrainians were forced to send all their crops to Russia, and the Russians would send back whatever the local board of agriculture or whatever determined they needed to feed themselves. Well, it wasn't nearly enough, and thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, maybe millions, starved to death. And nobody cared. Nobody cared. I guess the people that starved to death in the Ukraine cared, but the New York Times didn't care. The West didn't care. So that's Peterson's point there, that nobody gives a damn about the Ukraine. So why are we fighting this war, which, of course, tactical nuclear warheads, where does that go? Where does that go? So this is where I jumped in at the conclusion of the Peterson video, because he doesn't then go into what's next. In other words, well, okay, now we got tactical nuclear warheads going off, and that's all hell breaking loose. And what does that mean? Where does that go? Okay, let's examine that. Where does that go? Like I said, I think there's 100% chance that if the Russians start using tactical nukes, the United States will jump in on the Ukrainian side, officially. And God help us then. God help us then. The United States government will immediately throw the Constitution out the window. It will crack down using wartime emergency powers on all our rights, all of them. You can start right away with freedom of speech. Jordan Peterson, he's not going to be allowed to speak, certainly not on issues like this. Tucker Carlson, Dunn, myself, they'll just take down our videos. I don't know. It may go even further than that. You may get a knock on the door, basically telling you, you need to sit down and shut up, or we're just going to arrest you. Well, on what charge? Hey, wartime powers, man. We don't need a charge. We can do whatever we want. So freedom of speech, you thought the crackdown of freedom of speech was bad during the pandemic when we couldn't say the words vaccine or we couldn't say the words mask in any kind of negative connotation. Holy cow, that's child's play compared to what they're going to do in a real war. Oh my goodness. And I don't think I'm telling you people anything that is out of bounds on this. There's a long historical precedent of countries, including the United States, when they're at war, hey, constitutional rights, not quite so important all of a sudden. Japanese in internment camps, Germans in World War I under heavy surveillance, Germans in World War II under heavy surveillance. I can think of a specific example, but I'm not going to leave that aside. Lincoln did it. Woodrow Wilson did it. FDR did it. This is nothing new. This is not something that would be, holy cow, what a surprise. So definitely that would be coming. Gun confiscation, absolutely. Are you kidding me? If you're on any kind of anti-war platform, list, what have you, the government's not going to stand for some kind of fifth column going around this country against the war, they're going to run around and take those guns. And are you going to stop them? Are you going to, that'll be a question. Are you going to stand there and say, by damn it, this is my gun pried out of my dead hands, you know, it's because I'm anti-war? I wonder, but I would expect there would be some kind of gun confiscation, possibly private property confiscation, where industry's nationalized. All right, you got to make this, you got to make that. We're not going to allow oil production anymore because that's, you know, of course, that would make sense that you would have oil to help the economy, wartime economy. But again, you know, the people running this show, that goes against what they believe in. So who knows what they would do economically wise, other than whatever the hell they wanted to. So that I expect would happen. You know, you get this, I think there's 100% chance you get heavy repression with it in this country against its citizens. Now, the Civil War part, where does that come in? Well, is there enough people to stand up against that sort of thing? I don't know there would be. I really don't. I figure the war at the moment is probably 60-40 popular. For some reason, and I don't know why, 100% of the Democrat Party, and I say this to my Democrat listeners out there, you guys are 100% behind this war. That I guess you just believe that Putin will just die one day. You know, that he'll simply die of bad health, be assassinated, overthrown by his own people, and the United States will win. And the Ukraine will win. And freedom and justice will triumph over the evil Russians. And you might be right. You might be right. I hope you're right. I don't think you're right, but I hope you are. So you guys are just 100% behind this war come hell or high water. The leadership of the Democrat Party is 100% behind this come hell or high water. They continue to make inflammatory comments like, no, there's no end game here other than Putin loses. You know, we are going to stay with this no matter what happens. No matter what economic consequences there are, we are going to prosecute this war to a finish. That has been pretty consistent, their message. Now the Republicans, that's the question. This is the question. You have the war faction of the Republican Party, which is, of course, your Cheneys. I don't know where Dick Cheney is right now, if he's dead or not, or if he's somewhere behind the scenes pulling the strings on his daughter, Liz Cheney, Mitt Romney, Lindsey Graham, John Bolton, the same cast of characters that have been disgraced so many times over, and there they still are. You wonder, it's like, you guys haven't been right about anything. You were the people that lied us into the war in Iraq. You know, and I was thinking about that as far as the Democrats being pro-war. And now, you know, someone like myself, anti-war. You know, why? Well, aren't you being a hypocrite here, Mr. Arnold? You were pro-war back in 2003. You were all for invading Iraq. Yeah, you're right. You know what? I was wrong. I was wrong. Now, I'd also say along the lines of, I was lied to. You know, I had the United States government come out and say, they've got weapons of mass destruction. We've got to get in there before they get a chance to use them. Well, it was all not true. And nobody's ever really taken the fall for that. But that wasn't true. And we ended up in some hellaciously long, ridiculous, drawn-out war, lost some of our people, killed a hell of a lot more of their people. And for what? You know, because Saddam was a bad guy? Come on. You know, I was wrong. That we should not have been involved in that. Ron Paul was right. So here we are, and the same cast of characters on the Republican side are pushing for the same thing. Where does the rest of the Republican Party fall? Now, again, it's probably split 50-50. The last poll I saw was about 2 months ago, and it said about 33% say we're doing about the right thing here. About another 33% said, hey, we need to be doing more, damn it. No-fly zones. Let's get over there. Let's kick some Russian ass. And then there was about another 30% in my camp were saying, we are doing way too much. We should be out of this. Now, is that good? No, it's not good at all. But it was for me, in other words, for the correct answer, it's not good. But the hopeful part was my side was coming up in the poll. In other words, when the war broke out, almost all the Republicans were like, yeah, let's kick some Russian ass. Give me a Ukrainian flag, woohoo! Well, that's all starting to go away on the Russian, or I should say on the GOP side of the aisle. In other words, people were saying, when's this over? Let's get this over with. We need to get out of this. That number is increasing. It was like 10%. Now it's at 30%. That was 2 months ago. I would argue that number is now probably a majority of Republicans are against this damn war, and we need to get out of it. So that's where the Civil War thing comes in. It's like, well, there's a rally around the flag effect when real war breaks out. So, if this sort of thing happens, my fear is that a lot of red hat wearing MAGA guys are going to pick up whatever pitchfork they've got and go, woohoo! I know that we hated you in the past, Joe Biden, and we're sorry we called you Brandon. But by God, we got to kick some Ruski ass now. So let's get together and get this done. Oh, Lord. I mean, that's my fear. That if it's, say, a 70-30, 65-35 split pro-war, well, I mean, I might as well just stop making videos now. Go contact an attorney, I guess, because here comes the repression, and you better like it because it's coming, and there ain't nothing you can do about it. With those kind of numbers, I don't think there could be a civil war. No one would fight back. We would just give up our rights. We just give them up. And if you think, for example, that, well, it's just temporary, this is just, once this war's over, then everything will go back to normal. Maybe. In World War II, things went back to normal. I wonder if they would now. In World War II, prior to World War II, FDR, Franklin Roosevelt, he nationalized the United States economy, called it the National Recovery Act. His excuse was economic emergency. There you go again. Another governmental guy using an emergency to throw the Constitution out the window. Emergency. So he nationalized the United States economy. It was crazy. You did not own your own property anymore. The government owned it. They told you what to do, what you could make, how much you could charge for it, who you could hire. It was insane. And it didn't work. Let's make sure we throw that in there. It did not work. It was a complete and utter bloody mess. But the United States Supreme Court stepped in, said this is unconstitutional. You can't do this. That was the impetus behind Roosevelt wanting to pack the court in the late 30s, because his centerpiece of his New Deal, the NRA, not National Rifle Association, National Recovery Administration, I think that was what it's called, it was found unconstitutional. Well, then the war broke out and he got to nationalize the United States economy anyway, and everybody was all for it then because, hey, all right, we got to beat Hitler. All right, you tell me what to do, I'm all in. Woohoo, let's make some tanks and planes and kick some Hitler ass. So we did that. Now, when the war was over, went back to normal. Now, I would argue that went back to normal because the war was long, people were sick. of being told what to do and having to sacrifice like they were sacrificing at home in order to win the war. Roosevelt was old, sick, ultimately died before the war was over. If he was a young, healthy man, I think he would have made a strong argument to say, hey, wait a minute now, let's think a bit about before we throw out these all for one for all rules that we've been living under here for the past 4 years. That's worked pretty well. Before we just turn over the economy back to private ownership, I think maybe we should kind of think about, letting the government call the shots from now on. I feel strongly that were he a healthy man, he would have tried that. But he wasn't. The circumstances were not right. His successor, Truman, was not nearly a governmental guy like Roosevelt was, so it didn't happen. Would it happen this time? I think it probably will. Seeing who's in charge of the Democrat Party right now, yeah, why would they just hand back control? Okay, now you can talk and make videos about anything you want and say anything you want. This feeds right into, of course, the Great Reset. You've heard of that? That's a thing. That's a real thing. I mean, the Great Reset is basically the people in charge, the elites in this world, want to tear down the system and put a new system in place where they don't have to deal with stupid things like public opinion and rules and constitutions. They just want to be able to do whatever they want to do. So the Great Reset, a war, would certainly allow them to usher in the Great Reset pretty easily. More about this, let's talk a little more about this. Right now, I talked about the Republicans, who I think are the key, and reasonable Democrats too. I don't know that the Democrat voter, let's put it that way, that's really all that matters. The Democrat voter right now is empowering the leaders to do what they want. In other words, hell yeah, we're going to fight to the death. And the Democrat voter goes, yay! But no one's died yet, so no one's really been put to the test. I think the Democrat voter could possibly crack. Some of those people could come over to this is ridiculous, makes no sense. The consequences of what we're doing are outrageously painful and stupid. For what? I think that they may come over to the peace side of the equation. But I think more important is where does the Republicans go on this? Like I said, at the moment, I think it's split in the Republican Party. I think the peace faction is starting to gain more traction and may certainly be at 50-50, soon to be higher than that. In the House of Representatives, I think it will be more than 50%. In other words, I've seen comments out of a number of Republicans. Rand Paul, obviously, he's against it. He's a influential senator from Kentucky. Josh Hawley, influential senator from Missouri, he's against the war. I saw Matt Gaetz. He's within Republican circles. I know you Democrats think he's a joke. Within Republican circles, he's not unimportant. Let's put him that way. He came out the other day and said, "Hey, we're getting done with this." J.D. Vance, future senator from Ohio, he's against the war. The point is that the Republicans will take the House in November. They're going to take the House. That's going to happen. Will they take the Senate? That's an open question. That may or may not happen. But economic conditions are just way too bad right now. Even with the rally around the flag effect, if this happens, say, in October, even with that, the Republicans will take the House. They're that close as it is. And the Democrats have had way too many surefire, or I should say competitive, incumbent congressmen and women retire. They have way too much ground that they need to defend. it's going to happen. So with the Republicans in charge of the House in 23, that means there's no money for this war. All the money has to be appropriated out of the House. Now, there'll be some ways that I don't give a damn about rules. Joe Biden will be able to get some bucks here, get some bucks there, lie, borrow, beg, and steal, and get some bucks over there to send over and to prosecute the war. But if the Republicans hold firm and say, no more. This is ridiculous. We're not going to continue to just pump unlimited amounts of money into this boondoggle of a war, well, Biden's stuck. I mean, then he's hamstrung. He almost will have to negotiate. So knowing that this option to start this war, the United States, knowing, man, I think that makes it even more likely that this thing's going to kick off before the elections in November. In other words, if the war's going, then, I think he has a decent chance of just kowtowing the Republicans in the House and saying, you cannot tie my hands in the time of war. And he'd have somewhat of a point. And the Republicans would probably go, okay, because that's what Republicans do. They don't negotiate, they generally capitulate. That's what Republicans generally do. So but if he doesn't get this thing going before the election, in other words, if the Republicans take the House and they hold the House and then they try to get this thing going, say in 23, then the Republicans may just draw the line there and say, whoa, wait a minute, let's talk. So, that's where I see this could go. I thought this scenario was pretty plausible. That thing over there in the Ukraine is not winding down at all. If you read the news at all, you can tell it is not winding down. If anything, it's ramping up. Where is the off-ramp? Is this worth it, my Democrat friends? Is what I just described to you worth it? $10 gallon of gas. Rights thrown in the trash can. Is that worth it to you? Just so we can beat the Russians? Come on. I still say there's a peace plan that can be had if we would talk reasonably with Putin, which I don't think has happened yet, frankly. I don't think any kind of rational, real-world negotiations have taken place, not with basically the entire West saying, well, this doesn't end until Putin's head's on a platter. How are you going to negotiate a peace plan when that's your position? That's insane. You can't negotiate from that position. So it's, I don't like it. I hope it doesn't go this way. If it does go this way, I'm hoping that the American people are going to stand up and say, wait a minute, let's think about this. Did you know that they ran a public service announcement in New York City within the past, I'm going to say month, warning the people in New York about a nuclear attack? Hello, 50s. What the hell? They actually ran an ad, the city of New York, apparently, the maker of this public service announcement, saying, well, doesn't matter where it came from, the bomb has been dropped. What are you going to do? And, they gave them some basic tips that'll not help them at all. Don't walk into the fireball. Certainly don't look at the thing. That would be bad. Other than that, there's nothing they could do. All those people are dead if a bomb would drop on New York City. If bombs would drop anywhere in this country, it would destroy this country. This country is so fragile that a virus that killed like one tiny little bit of what percentage of the population in this whole country practically fell to pieces for 2 years. If you set off a nuclear weapon in this country, oh my God, I shudder to think what would happen. Man, oh man. So, and that's a reasonable thing that could happen once nuclear weapons start getting used. Hey, you use it once in battle, on the battlefield, hey, no, use it again. Use it again. Now, after a while, it becomes commonplace. You don't think twice about doing it. Well, it's really just a big bomb. What's the deal? It's just a big bomb. I mean, we could tie 10 of the other bombs together and get the same effect and nobody be upset. So we'll just be more efficient and use one nuke. Yeah, sure. That's the thinking you start getting down with. Use a nuke on a city. Well, it's a small bomb and it's a small city. It's not a real, it's mostly a military city. You know, they have factories and it's mostly military bases, not that many civilians there. But we have the strategic reasons for wanting to do this. We want to make a point. So we'll go ahead and do that. You can talk yourself into anything once you start using these weapons. God damn, I mean, are we really talking about this in the year 2022? And it's up to us. It's up to us people to say no to this, to say no to the Lindsey Grahams, the John Boltons, the Joe Bidens. Stop this. Stop this. We didn't sign up for this. This is not what we are. This is not what we want. As Jordan Peterson said, nobody gives a damn about the Ukraine, and they never have. Damn it. So, hey, what do you think? You think this is a plausible scenario? Or do you think that, well, you know, do you continue to think that this will just shut itself off by itself, that, you know, at a certain point, Zelensky and Putin will stand there and shake hands and go, all right, enough's enough. We don't love each other, but we're not going to shoot at each other anymore. You think that's going to happen? How is that going to happen? When is that going to happen? Is that still what everybody thinks? You know, I'm curious. Put them in the comments section. I'd like to hear how you all think this ends. You know, I've been in the camp from this is bad from the outset. This is going to get out of control. I've been saying that from the outset. Peterson kind of put this back at the top of my mind when I saw somebody of his heft is thinking right along the same lines I've been thinking. It's like, oh boy. So I'm right about this. That's basically what I'm saying to myself. You tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong so I can go back to handicapping the second half of the baseball season with a clear mind, not worrying about the end of the world, because usually the worst scenario doesn't happen. So I can then determine whether or not the Astros will beat the Yankees in the opener of the doubleheader tomorrow. So that, I would like to do that. But good, great, thanks. I appreciate you being here. More videos, more frequent videos once we get our camera in the mail. And then I'm thinking, I don't know what I'm thinking, but we'll make more videos as the election approaches. Hopefully we'll have an election and it won't be canceled by the onset of a war, but we'll see. I'm Eric Arnold. I believe in free speech. Signing off.